Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Lynn Wilson and welcome to my pantry stockpile. Stockpile, stockpile, stockpile. That's all we hear people talking about. Why is it? What's it all about? Well, tonight I'm going to share my story of how I started and why I started my stockpile. So get your coffee and come and join me. So I do have a stockpile pantry. This is a small cabinet and I have things up here. It needs to be organized. I'm actually starting to see holes here and holes here, some holes over here, some down in here, a little bit on the bottom. And I'm trying to use up things in my pantry and my stockpile, trying to eat things down. As they say, eat down the stockpile a little bit. If you watch Jan from New York City, Jan about a year ago had a very full stockpile. She's a family of one and she has been eating down her stockpile for the past year. And now it's at a point where she said, you know what? Let's get it together. Time to fill it back up. Prices are high. I don't think they're going to be coming down anytime soon. And even if they were to come down, they will never be, I don't believe, what we had 2 to 3 years ago. I think it is just what it is. So I tend to want to panic and say, I better buy it now. I better buy it now because the prices are really good. And yes, absolutely 100%. But if I don't have the room, I don't have the money, whatever, then it's just not the right time. And right now I feel being a good steward of my money is to eat down a lot of what's in my stockpile because some of it will expire or will go funny and I need to use up a lot of what I have first and then I'm going to replenish. So just a little commercial break there. We are going to have a printable and some other details coming with this, but a 2-week rotation, 2-week grocery shopping, 2-week list, 2-week menu, all that coming in a video very soon and some printables that you can use to help you. So like I said when I started, why did I ever start a stockpile? What happened? What made me start one? Did I always have one? The answer is no. I grew up with my mom always having a few canned goods. We always had a couple of cans of soup or a couple of cans of vegetables or something somewhere. You know, there was always a little extra in the house. My mom did not grow up very fancy, nor did she grow up rich as a child, and they didn't have much of anything. So my mom always liked to have a few extras in the house. Her mom, my grandmom, basically had what she needed, and that was it. That was all she could afford, and she would usually shop, you know, once a day, every couple days, get what she needed, and that was just how she rolled. And when I got married, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know how to menu plan. I didn't know how to budget. I did not understand how to pull together a meal and like how to shop, I guess I should say. How to go and shop for a meal. You need this and this and this. You need so many nights a week. You need so many lunches. I would just look and, oh, this looks good and that looks good and this looks good. And then I get home and I have all this great food, but none of it really made sense. And so we would sort of eat this and that, and then we would shop and spend all this money and then realize that we were missing half of what we needed. So we'd shop some more and it was not good. And then we went through a time where we were dirt poor. I mean, dirt poor. And our oldest, who is now 32, was probably 2 or 3 years old, I'm thinking. And I will never forget it. We were in a rental house and it was a very cold, windy day. And my husband worked the late shift. He would work 3 to 11. And I needed to send him off with something to eat before he left for work. Now, when he got to work, he would get meals. He worked at a hospital, so he would get like a staff discount or Maybe it was even free. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. But I knew that he could get food when he got to work. I knew that that was available to him. But in the meantime, I had to feed him and my son lunch. So I went into our cabinets, and our cabinets were very bare. We had, a few spices, and the rest was dishes. And I wanted to make them something for lunch. And I had a package of saltine crackers. They come in that little sleeve. And I had about maybe, 6 to 8 crackers. And I had a can of soup. And that's all I had. And it was as if it happened 5 minutes ago. It is that embedded in my brain, like there's this imprint. And I looked in all the cabinets to realize we had no more food. And a lot of it was our own stupidity, we were too naive in a lot of ways. We didn't know what we were doing, and we were two young kids just trying to make it happen, and life was difficult, and it is what it is. So, you learn lessons in life, and the best lessons in life are the ones that you decide to learn from it and make a major life change. And that's what I did. So knowing my husband had to go to work and knowing that my son had to eat, I had my can of soup, and I cooked that can of soup, and I gave them each I gave my son, who was little at the time, he was able to have some chicken noodle soup with his dad, and his dad had some soup, and I split the crackers, and each had some crackers. And I remember my husband saying to me, "Aren't you going to eat?" And I said, "Oh, I'll eat later. I'm busy in the kitchen." And he didn't know. He didn't know it was our last can of soup, because I know what he would have done. He would have told me to eat, and he would have skipped. So for that day, I don't remember what I did for our son for dinner that night. I don't know. I don't remember if I went to my mom's maybe. I'm not really sure. But I knew my husband was taking care of at work. But I do remember I did not have any more food. So I had to skip lunch and dinner that day and do without. Now the good news was I knew my husband would be coming home that evening with a paycheck. And that meant that next day we could go to the bank and get some money and buy food. But I remembered sitting home that night just feeling horrible as a wife, horrible as a homemaker, horrible as a mother, that how could I have let us get to this point? And, we're a family. My husband and I together make a team, and it was just as much his fault as it was mine, or it was just as much my fault as it was his. We, again, were two young kids, and we really did not know what we were doing. But I'll tell you one thing. I learned that night very quickly. I needed to make a quick change, fast and in a hurry. And that change needed to be life-changing. So this one can of soup is what changed my life. And I realized after that, I wasn't good at menu planning, and I didn't know how to do all that. But I can tell you, I needed to make sure my family always had food. So at that point, this one local store near us started having what we call the can sale. And they would have, cans of whatever, 10 for $1. I don't even remember. We're talking 30 years ago. But they would have big sales, and you could get a lot of bulk can items for a really cheap price. So whatever I could, the buy one, get one frees, anything that I could do, I did do. And I picked up everything that I could in little bits. I didn't have a lot of money, so I had to get the basics. But if I could get 2 extra cans one week, or 5 cans one week, or we got an extra bonus in our paycheck, I would take that and I'd buy these things. And I started stocking up. I can't say it wasn't until probably 2015 or so that I really had a full pantry stockpile. I've always had extra food in the house. I learned how to can using a canner. I learned how to do canning that way. I learned how to stretch a meal, how to take a hamburger helper and add maybe a can of vegetables or 2, or add some bulk of barley or rice or something to stretch and stretch and stretch. My mother-in-law taught me how to make homemade soup. I'll tell you one thing, homemade soup, you can take everything at the end of the week that's left over. Could be a little bit of sausage, a little bit of chicken, a little bit of roast beef, doesn't matter. You throw it all in a pot. You add whatever vegetables you can. You know what? The best thing you can always do is just add a jar of store-bought pasta sauce. Like you had a Prego that has a lot of flavor in it. A can of diced tomatoes. You can add rice and noodles. Doesn't matter. Whatever you have in the refrigerator, you can cook up the best pot of soup that can get you through that whole weekend and even into the first couple of days of the next week. And use up what you have. Have a good meal that sustains you for the rest of the rest of that weekend and a few days. I don't know who's out there that needs to hear this message. Having no food is a serious business. There are people that legitimately cannot afford food. We were in a tight spot. I would say it was a combination of our own shortcomings of not knowing what we're doing. We also didn't have a lot of money. We were going through some hard times. Our car broke down. We were living far from family. We had to commute a lot. Everything we did just cost us a lot of money. We had to make some other changes. It wasn't just our stockpile. We had to make a change on our car and where we were living. We had to do a lot of life decisions. But if you're out there and you're saying, I get it, I don't have any money, or I've made some poor choices and I'm embarrassed to say that. I remember we were very embarrassed. We were extremely embarrassed. And people make fun. Family make fun. We had many family members that when they found out some of the choices we made, either scolded us or put us down or made fun of us or belittled us or, judged us, and I'm sure some of you have family and friends that would do the same. It did not help the situation, but what did help is recognizing that we had a problem and we needed to make a change. From this can of soup, I have built an entire stockpile. This is part of what I have in my pantry stockpile. I have over in that direction, I have another shelf with items. Over in this direction, I have another shelf of items. I have another cabinet with items in it. And it is important that you have a pantry stockpile. You might get sick of hearing people talking about it. But lack of money, lack of health, the lack of transportation, the lack of a job, and you can fill in the blank. These things can hit you, and they can hit you hard when you least expect it. But having a pantry like this and learning how to be creative, I think that's one of the things I would love to do some videos on what do I do with these bits and pieces, and can I make a meal out of it? Now, it's not always a traditional meal, and I think for me, I was raised on you have a potato, you have a meat, you have a vegetable. You have some kind of starch or a rice or a noodle and a meat and a vegetable. And that's what a meal is supposed to look like. Well, when you don't have a lot of money or you have a lot of leftovers, you have to be very creative. And I know that sounds silly, but it kind of went against the grain in my brain of what a meal is supposed to look like. And when I could finally get over that, I came up with some great tasting meals, and my husband would be like, oh man, make this again. And I'm like, I can't. It's what I had left over, what I could find, and I threw it together. If you're interested in creative meals with whatever you have, pulling the pantry together, or using leftovers and bits and pieces, leave me a comment below. I make those meals all the time. I just don't share them with you. But I would be glad to show you. It's not going to be a gourmet meal. It's not going to be the perfect food pyramid type meal. But it's going to be what I have. It's going to be what I have left over. And it's going to be something to feed my family and make us all feel good and get some food in our system. So if you would like information and a video or two about that, let me know. In the meantime, I want to encourage you to definitely consider starting a stockpile. I started mine with one can. I replaced that can of soup and I built it on from there. I have done many videos on stockpiling. If you need some tips and tricks along the way, I've got more videos up and coming, and I just want to encourage you, please make sure if you have extra food, extra money, and so on, and you know somebody is in need, the best thing that you can do is get a cardboard box or a bag, throw some supplies in there, and leave it on their doorstep. Don't even knock, don't even say it's from you, just leave it on their doorstep so they don't have to be embarrassed, they don't have to feel awkward. But when they open that door and they find food on that doorstep, trust me, they're going to be blessed and they're going to be thankful. Thanks so much for coming over tonight. Thanks for joining me in my stockpile and my pantry. I hope my story of how I started my stockpile is an encouragement to someone out there who needs that little shot in the arm to say, you know what, it's time. It's time I made a life change. Okay, guys, thanks so much for coming over tonight. We'll catch you all on the next video.